Imagine this. You're lying on a dirt floor. A shaman is hovering over you with a sharpened stone. There's no hospital, no medicine, no anesthesia, just fire, herbs, and prayer. And yet, they operated. They drilled into skulls, amputated limbs, removed rotting teeth, and somehow, some of them survived. This is the story of how ancient humans handled unimaginable pain thousands of years before we invented anything to stop it, and what they discovered accidentally changed medicine forever. For 99% of human history, pain was just life. You broke a bone. You dealt with it. You got an infection. You hoped your body figured it out. You needed a tooth pulled. Someone grabbed your head and yanked. But here's what most people don't know. Ancient humans weren't just suffering through it. They were experimenting, constantly, desperately. As far back as 5,000 years ago, the Sumerians were documenting the use of opium. They called it the joy plant. They knew something in that flower could make the pain disappear. The Egyptians mixed mandrake root with wine. The Greeks used henbane and hemlock in precise doses. One wrong amount, and you'd stop breathing forever. The right amount? You'd go numb enough to survive surgery. They were essentially building the world's first pharmacy. Without chemistry, without labs. Just trial, error, and dead patients who didn't make it through the experiment. Here's where it gets strange. Archaeologists have found thousands of human skulls with perfectly circular holes drilled into them. Some of these skulls are over 7,000 years old. And here's the part that stops everyone cold. The bone had regrown around the edges. These people survived. The procedure is called trepanation. It's the oldest known surgical procedure in human history. Why would anyone drill into a living skull? The theories range from relieving pressure after a head injury to treating epilepsy to releasing evil spirits, depending on what culture you're looking at. But what's fascinating is the technique. They didn't just hack. They used small circular motions. They controlled depth. They somehow understood that if you go too deep, you kill the patient. This is precision. In the Stone Age. And the pain management? Mostly alcohol, plants, and the patient biting down on something. But some evidence points to early forms of hypnosis, rhythmic chanting and drumming that put patients into an altered state before the procedure began. Sound ridiculous? Modern research has shown that certain rhythmic sounds can measurably reduce the perception of pain. Ancient shamans figured this out empirically. Across nearly every ancient civilization, one pattern keeps showing up. They all found a plant. The Incas chewed coca leaves before dental extractions. The residue dripped into the wound and numbed the tissue. A primitive but functional local anesthetic. Cocaine, refined from the same plant, became the first clinically used local anesthetic in Western medicine in 1884. In ancient China, Hua Tuo, a physician who lived around 200 AD, reportedly used a compound called mafeisan. Dissolved in wine, it allegedly allowed him to perform abdominal surgeries while patients were unconscious. The recipe was lost after his death. Historians are still debating what was in it. In India, Sushruta, writing around 600 BC, described using wine and cannabis as preoperative sedatives. His surgical manual, the Sushruta Samhita, describes over 300 procedures including rhinoplasty and cataract surgery. Rhinoplasty, nose reconstruction, over 2,500 years ago. The ancient world wasn't primitive. It was figuring out the same problems we have today, with radically fewer resources. But here's what doesn't get talked about enough. Not everything they used was physical. Ancient healing wasn't just about plants and surgery. It was a full psychological experience. Think about what a shaman's ritual actually was. You walked into a specific space. There was fire, smoke, sound, rhythm, and an authority figure who spoke with absolute certainty. Your mind was prepared for what was coming. Expectation was managed. Fear was reduced. Today, we call this the placebo effect, but that name undersells it. The placebo effect isn't fake medicine. It triggers real neurological changes, real pain reduction, real release of the body's own opioids, endorphins. Studies have shown that placebo surgery, where patients are cut open, anesthetized, and then closed up without the actual procedure being performed, produced measurable physical improvements in conditions like knee pain. Ancient healers didn't know about neuroscience, but they had discovered through thousands of years of observation that context, belief, and ritual could change how the body processes pain. They had built a psychological operating system for suffering. Of course, it wasn't all success. Most ancient surgical patients died. Infection killed more people than the surgery itself. Without germ theory, the idea that invisible things caused disease didn't exist yet. They cleaned wounds with honey, which actually works because honey is antimicrobial. They used moldy bread on infections, which contains early forms of penicillin. They boiled instruments not because they understood bacteria, but because fire was sacred and purifying. They were accidentally right about things they had no framework to explain. Every failure became data. Every death taught the next healer something. This was slow, brutal, empirical science, conducted without the word science existing yet. The ancient world was a 10,000-year clinical trial run by people who had no idea they were researchers. Here's what's easy to miss. Modern anesthesia, the kind that lets you sleep through open heart surgery, was only invented in 1846. That's less than 200 years ago. Before that, surgeons were judged on speed. The fastest surgeon in the world could amputate a leg in 28 seconds because every second under the knife was pure agony. Everything changed in 1846 when William Morton demonstrated ether anesthesia in Boston. A patient went unconscious. A tumor was removed from his neck. He woke up and said he felt nothing. The surgeon turned to the audience and said, "Gentlemen, this is no humbug." But Morton didn't invent the concept, he refined it. The concept that something inhaled or ingested could suspend consciousness and stop pain. That concept had been tested by Incas, Chinese physicians, Indian surgeons, Egyptian healers, and Greek pharmacologists for thousands of years before him. He stood on 7,000 years of anonymous human experimentation. The next time you go under anesthesia, think about this. You're not just benefiting from modern medicine, you're benefiting from every shaman who found a plant that worked, every surgeon who developed a technique under torchlight, every patient who survived something that should have killed them. Pain is universal. The human drive to fight it is equally universal. We've just gotten better tools. The instinct was always there.